This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. A big welcome today to the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast with your host David Charlton, where today I'm going to take you back to episode 1 of this podcast. That's right, it was the start, naturally, of my journey into podcasting, where I was joined by a rock star in the field, Strycharczyk. Doug has written many books. He's been involved an awful lot in research, and he's the director of AQR International, who specialise in licensing psychometric tools such as the MTQ+, where you can measure your own and your organisation's mental toughness, amongst other measures that Doug and AQR are interested in. This episode is essentially going back to basics. Doug goes on to share a short snippet which explains the difference between resilience and mental toughness, as well as touching on exactly what mental toughness is.
You go to organisations and you say, what's more important, knowledge or skills or attitude? It's always attitude. And this is what we're really talking about here. Do you have an attitude that makes the most of your knowledge and skills? Because if you've got the wrong attitude, you won't use them. So I've been working for almost 30 years with Professor Peter Clough. There's been a number of researchers looking at what is this concept, mental toughness. But Peter was the first to sort of get under the skin of the subject. And he worked out that it had 4 key elements, which psychologists call constructs. And that's control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. And control really is describing the extent to which you're feeling sufficient control of your life and your circumstances to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. That doesn't necessarily mean you're in control of everything. You just feel that you're in control of enough. And it's like a measure of self-worth. I think I can do it. In fact, the can-do concept sits there. Commitment is about the extent to which I like working to goals and I'll do whatever it takes to achieve those goals. And those 2 elements together really represent what we would commonly call resilience. Now, I'm bringing resilience into play here so that people can understand there is a relationship between resilience and mental toughness. But mental toughness is a much wider concept, and it's generally a more fundamentally valuable concept. So resilience is simply, well, the textbook definition is the ability to recover from an adverse situation. And the way that the definition's phrased tells you it's a passive concept. So it's describing your reaction. So something's happened, it's knocked me off my feet. Can I pick myself up, dust myself off and carry on going? And we know that's down to those 2 elements, control and commitment, that I've just described. However, what we've found since, and there's a lot of evidence for it, is that some of us do a little bit more than adopt a resilient approach. Resilience helps you to survive, but a lot of us seem to thrive when the going gets tough. So what are those elements that bring this capacity to thrive, to play? And the first one is challenge. And challenge is simply talking about, when things go wrong, do I just see the downside? Do I just see the problem? Or do I see the opportunity? And do I see the solution? So some of us get paralyzed by what's happening, but others will say, hang on, I know it's all gone wrong, but look, there's a bit of blue sky over here. And those people are bringing a positive element to what we describe as resilience. Because the other element that brings positivity is confidence. So if you have self-belief, because that's what confidence is all about, and you have self-belief in your key abilities and capabilities, then you know you're going to be able to deal with whatever happens, even no matter how bad it is, and perhaps even emerge thriving. So those two elements, confidence and challenge, bring the element of positivity to resilience. And Peter Clough will often say, resilience is the element that helps you to survive, hang on by your fingertips, but mental toughness is the element that enables you to thrive, to make the most of the situation that you're in and come out, hopefully, with a bit of a smile on your face. So that's a very quick run round the mental toughness concept. Since Peter did that work, we've been able to dig down to another level. And that's been fundamentally important because we had to understand where did these constructs come from, that we've been able to go down to another level, the factors that make up those constructs. And under control, we've got life control and emotional control. Life control is where can-do sits. Emotional control is the extent to which I will manage my emotional responses, or do I let my emotions run me? With commitment, it splits neatly into goal orientation or achievement orientation. In other words, do I know where I'm going and will I do whatever it takes to get there? Challenge, it's risk orientation, that's seeing the opportunity and maybe having a go. And learning orientation, maybe that didn't work, but did I learn something from it? And then confidence is about confidence in abilities. And that's really interesting because we all have abilities, but we don't have self-belief. Very often we won't use those abilities. That's what this is really capturing. And then there's interpersonal confidence, and that's really about the extent to which I'm prepared to influence others as much as they will try to influence me. So we can go down to that level, and that level is very, very important because what we know is those 8 factors that I've just described are all independent. In other words, you can be high on one, low on the other. You can change one, but it won't necessarily change another. They're independent, and there are about 40,000 combinations of those factors, which means we can do something that's quite unique in people development and organizational development. We can get down to working with the individual and their needs. And that's becoming more and more important as we're moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to development.
From time to time, I think it's very important to go back to basics, and this provides the motivation for this short episode. As I alluded to a couple of weeks ago, the podcast is now into its 4th year, so I've been reflecting on that journey and planning for the future. And when we go back to basics in mental toughness terms, well, resilience is a word that crops up an awful lot. People use resilience and mental toughness hand in hand, whether they're in the personal development space or in a sporting context, or even just in their life in general. Yet, as Doug describes, there are big differences between resilience and mental toughness. Now, if we think of sport, which is predominantly where I do most of my work, resilience, well, it's vital in competitive situations. Perhaps if we think about Wimbledon and the tennis player who loses a set and they need to get back on the wagon in the next set, or in a football match, when a player makes a mistake which leads to a goal, ideally you want to see them respond positively to that situation, to that mistake. So these are very, very situational things. And our responses, well, they can often be pretty unconscious in those moments. We don't even realise how we're going to respond. We haven't planned for it. And often there's no real explanation for the way that we do respond. But this is where mental toughness comes in. It can explain why we do respond in different situations. Acute situations, like I've mentioned, on the tennis court or on the football pitch, as well as chronic situations. So what I mean by that is day-to-day life. So, if we find it difficult to control our emotions, our perspective is going to be skewed. If we're low in confidence and ability, well, when we make a mistake, we might really struggle to cope with that. If we throw in life control and that sense of can-do, there's many people who are very, very negative and have a can't-do attitude. So when it comes down to difficulties, they're going to be pretty much doom and gloom. Add in negativity, criticism, and if someone is low in interpersonal confidence, well, coupled with some of the other factors that I've mentioned there, they're going to find it really, really difficult. The head will likely drop. They're probably not going to try to persuade their teammates or coaches. They're not going to influence people, which in a team sport setting, like football, cricket, rugby, netball, hockey, is so vital. So as I alluded to, this episode really is a back to basics episode. I don't actually mention the words mental toughness an awful lot when I think back, which could be construed as a negative for some people who are critiquing my work. I tend to pick situations or scenarios and then share some tips and some tricks, or to get my guests to share some advice to help you, the listener, cope with different situations. But actually, as I've alluded to on this podcast time and time again, awareness, self-awareness is key. And really that is my parting shot today. It's to remember to get to know yourself, to give yourself the time and the permission to know yourself inside out, to get to know your own mental toughness and how that goes on to influence you in acute situations, in pressure situations, like in a match or a competitive event, or just in life in general. And if you're prepared to put that time in, that effort, and perhaps even change some of the things that you do, well, the magic can happen. And as Bob Winters mentioned in the previous episode, where he talked about limitless thinking, you might well see a big shift in your mindset, in your performances, in the way that you go about your business, if you do so. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please do also sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter. It goes out every 2 to 3 weeks with lots of podcasts, blogs, bits of research and various different resources to help you. I wish you well today. I hope it's a good one. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.